So you're trying to win some money in DFS, and you're setting your lineups for Thursday night, but who do you play? Well, these are the 10 players you must start for Thursday Night Football. And we're starting with $5,400 Donovan Peoples-Jones, who in my opinion is going to be low owned, and he's a fantastic value. He is the clear wide receiver 2 on this team. He actually was tied for the most snaps with Amari Koopa last week, and he ran 28 routes. But the problem was this only led to one target. One target on 80% of the snaps ain't gonna do it. But here's the thing. It was just a week ago that he posted a massive week 1, over a 30% target share, right? He had 11 targets, 6 catches, 60 yards. It was a very nice air yard showing of over 80 yards. He put up 12 fantasy points. It was great. But then he lays an egg and now people don't want to play him. But the usage is still there. And don't expect teammate Amari Koopa to see a 37% target share again. Because if I'm being honest with you, this is Amari's game log so far this year. His 9 catch, 101 yard performance for a touchdown when he went off to be a top 10 wide receiver on the week for over 25 fantasy points. There's a good chance this is his highest scoring game of the season. And Peoples-Jones, not only does he have the nice size, he's lengthy, he's 215 pounds, which is a great build for a wide receiver, but he has the athleticism, top 1% burst of all time, and he has the speed as well. Now he's gonna face the Steelers secondary, and I'll be honest, their safeties are elite. You have Minkah Fitzpatrick back there, who's probably the best safety in the NFL. Edmonds is playing fantastic to start the year, but he should see a lot of Witherspoon, who has struggled to start 2022. As you can see from the highlighted stats, Witherspoon through 2 games has allowed 11 receptions, a 79% catch rate. That means his targets that he's been out there, he's allowed 79 of them to be caught, 2 touchdowns, and 133 yards. That's just in man coverage, not even zone. So that's really good for one Donovan Peoples-Jones. And then you're going to want to play this tight end. And we're talking about Steelers second-year player out of Penn State, $7,000 Pat Freiermuth, who so far this season is seeing great usage. He's played 32% of his snaps out of the slot, and he's only blocking, this is the big thing, he's only blocking on 9% of his plays, which means he's running a ton of routes. I can't stress how important this is. He basically operated as the number 2 wide receiver last week. And last week, he saw 7 targets on just 27 routes, and on the year now, he has 17 targets, including 2 in the red zone. And he leads all tight ends with 3 deep targets of 20+ yards. We didn't see this usage a lot last year, but now in this newer offense without Ben Roethlisberger, he's being used more downfield. In my opinion, at this price point with the touchdown upside that he possesses, and now we're seeing some downfield usage, I think he makes for a sneaky captain. Maybe not the best option, and we can talk about who that is in Discord and on the live stream as well. You be sure to tune into the Sal Vetri live channel right here for that live stream before the game starts, but he's a nice captain at $10,500. And now I want to talk about a rookie who this one might seem a little bit surprising, because I'm talking about George Pickens, who's not the cheapest. He's $4,800 for a guy who's not played that well this season, but here's the good news. Pickens' usage has still been elite. Look, he's played 50 snaps, which is basically the same amount that Deontay Johnson played last week, and he's ran 36 routes, compared to Claypool and Deontay, who have each ran 38 last week. He's still a starter. He's out there for almost every play. So this is elite usage, but here's the bad news. This usage has led to just 6 targets for him and only 2 receptions so far, but he's a very talented player. This is likely to change. So at his price point of $4,800, I really do think people will ignore him because it's not cheap. He's not in the $3,000 range, but I think based on the usage, he's a solid play, this athletic stud. And then I also want to play his quarterback, although he's bad, in Mitch Trubisky. And I'm not going to shock anybody here. It's mainly a pricing play. You rarely see a quarterback below $9,000 on a showdown slate on DraftKings, and now you're getting both of them below here. You're not playing him in any deep season-long leagues. Maybe you play him in a 2-quarterback league because you're stressed just to play somebody, but $8,600 is actually cheaper than Jacoby Brissett. Makes sense. He has a much lower team implied total of just 16.75 points, but Mitch Trubisky at this $8,600 price tag is in play. But let's talk about the warts, the bad news. The dude's been pitiful. I mean, 181 yards per game, and he ranks 33rd in yards per attempt efficiency, just 5.1 yards per attempt. The NFL average is like 7. This is atrocious. And then his efficiency is 31st. He has been, no jokes here, the worst quarterback in the league. But he at least maybe has a decent matchup and will be playing from behind. Like, the Browns front 7 is way better than the secondary, and they spent a lot of money on this defense. And right now, the guy who they thought would be a stud cornerback, Denzel Ward, through 2 weeks, he ranks 96th out of 103 starting cornerbacks. So it's sort of a hold your nose play for the value here on DraftKings at $8,600, Mitch Trubisky. But the guy that I like the most and might be my favorite captain option is going to be Deontay Johnson at $9,200, who just continues to earn targets. On the season now, he has 22 targets, top 10 in the NFL. What's new with this guy? And a 31% target share. Last week ended up earning 12 targets. Now, his average depth of target target. It's a small sample, like his yards after the catch is going to be coming down, but because of the inaccuracy and inefficiency of Mitch Trubisky, it's dropped. Like with Ben Roethlisberger, it was low. Like you'd like to see a yards per reception in the 12 to 13 range. It was always in the 10s with Mr. Ben Roethlisberger, and now it's at 8.6 with Trubisky. This needs to come up to have more explosive, bigger plays. But the volume alone makes him a really strong play on honestly a weaker slate. And he's going to have that same matchup that we just talked about and see a lot of Denzel Ward, who has been bottom 10 to open the year. And more specifically, Ward has allowed 6 receptions, an 86% catch rate in man coverage, and 139 yards and 2 touchdowns this year. This is a great spot for Deontay, who's honestly a borderline top 10 receiver. Now, in terms of having some more action on this game, I have a couple of props. So far, I've taken Kareem Hunt over 17.5 receiving yards and Naji Harris over 52.5 rushing yards. More on Naji in a moment. If you want to tail these bets, you just click the link in the description. It takes you to prizepicks.com. You use the code SAL22 and you'll get a free bet up to $100. Yes, that is right. I did not stutter. Free. You put in 20, you get 20 back. You put in 50, you get 50. And if you're a heavy hitter, a head honcho, a kingpin, you put in 100, you get $100 brewskis, schmacks right back to you. So if you're interested in this offer, limited time, be sure to take advantage of it now with the thousands of other people who have. You can learn more with the link in the description. And now let's talk about a value play. I'm looking at you $1,400 David Bell. Not a lot of value plays on this slate. In terms of guys below $3,000, he's your best option. And the rookie saw his role expand week 2. He was by far the wide receiver 3 in this offense. He ran 12 routes, just 1 route for Demetric Felton and 4 routes for Anthony Schwartz, the only other receivers to run a route. And he was injured in camp. He missed a lot of the preseason, so it's going to take him some time to get acclimated to the offense. But based on this trajectory, he might run 20 routes this week, which makes him far too cheap. Because this guy in college saw a target share over 3 seasons of 29%. He went over 1,000 yards twice. He knows how to get open. Top 13% all time in terms of his target share. So he's a nice cheap option. And now here's a solid mid-range play. And I'm looking at $7,600 Kareem Hunt, who's almost $5,000 cheaper than his backfield mate Nick Chubb. And this is interesting because Hunt on the season has played more than 50% of the snaps, and he's seen at least 15 opportunities in each of the first 2 games. And now he has a tough matchup, and so does Nick Chubb against this run defense of the Steelers. So it might lead to more second and third and longs, which leads to Kareem Hunt being on the field running routes and seeing targets. And not only are there targets going to be in play, but he's top 5 in red zone touches. 7 red zone touches so far this year. So when you combine those 2 things, the pass catching work and then the red zone work, it becomes clear that he has the fantasy cheat codes. And now let's talk about one of his teammates who's a decent captain option. I'm looking at Amari Koopa, who's actually the 3rd highest priced player on the slate, but he's still below $10,000, still affordable in both the flex and the captain, and he had a 37% target share last week. He led the team in snaps, routes. He's the clear wide receiver 1, and he also saw 10 targets, which is 9 more targets than any other receiver. And now this week, he'll see a decent matchup. The safeties will be tough, and when he sees Cam Sutton, it won't be an impossible matchup. Sutton has been okay this year, a well above average, I guess you can say, but not elite. But then he'll also see Witherspoon, who we talked about earlier, has already allowed over 130 yards and 80% catch rate and 2 touchdowns this year, 133 total yards on 11 receptions to be exact. So when I'm looking at the expensive plays, Amari, wide receivers have a higher captain upside in DFS. He starts to become a solid play. I would prefer Deontay Johnson, who's actually cheaper on this slate, but Amari will be on a short list of like 3 to 5 players who are captain options for me. And then after that, we can look at the most expensive player on the slate, who's probably too expensive in many situations, as a 5-point favorite, $12,000 Nick Chubb. Now, Chubb has seen 20 plus opportunities in each game. He's not running a lot of routes. He only has 17 total routes run on the season, which has led to 4 targets, and it's probably going to lead to less. When you see 16, 17 routes for a guy like him, usually you'll see 2 targets, so you can't really rely on his pass catching work. That's going to be Kareem Hunt, hence why I like the over 17.5 rushing yards. But last week alone, you see the 3 touchdowns for Chubb, the #1 running back on the week. That's the upside this guy has. He's the best pure runner on the ground. He is fantastic on a per touch basis when it comes to carrying the football. The problem just becomes the money, because if you want to play Chubb in the captain spot, you only have $6,400 left per position, so you can get him in the flex spot. He likely needs 2 touchdowns to pay off that captain spot. He should be a little bit lower owned there, but in general, he's going to pick up ownership on this slate. That big of a price gap between him and the next guy of over $2,000 is going to lead to a situation where a lot of people play one value play, a kicker or a defense, or both, and then they can easily get up to Nick Chubb, because I don't think a lot of people will be excited to play either Jacoby Brissett or Mitch Trubisky, meaning there's a lot of money in between there to get up to Chubb. And now, if you want to see the exact ownership for Nick Chubb, my overall point projections, a GPP strategy show where I give my exact exposures every Sunday morning. We talk for 30 minutes on a podcast, and a whole bunch more that you can see on the screen. You can click the link in the description to my Patreon, sign up, and join the 1,000+ people in our beautiful community. And then we have to make a decision on Naji Harris, who's in a weird spot here. He's $9,800, and look, he has not been good this year. He's averaging less than 3 yards per carry. He's outside the top 50 in efficiency. Just 3.6 yards per touch is 25% worse than he had last year when he was already bad and inefficient. But that's not all, because now Naji is also seeing less usage. He played 84% of the snaps on average last year, 64% this year. Even when you take out the fact that he left the first game due to injury, he's still playing 15% less snaps and seeing 30% less opportunities than last year. So here's your takeaway. Naji Harris plays on a poor offense, but his offensive line this year has been improved since last year. They're not great, but they're much better. I mean, Okafor at the right tackle spot has arguably been the best right tackle in the league, believe it or not. It's a borderline top half of the league offensive line. So for Naji to still be this efficient speaks probably a little bit more to his talents, maybe his injury that he had in the preseason so far. This is not great. And at this $9,800 price tag, unless he comes in really low owned, and you can check the tools on Patreon to find out, I'm going to lean to the higher upside, more volatile type players when it comes to ceiling for DFS, and Deontay Johnson and Amari Koopa in this exact price range, and even Nick Chubb, who will likely be lower owned, and he's just way, way, way better of a player and more efficient. So these are your do's and don'ts, your must plays, and maybe some guys to hesitate on for DFS this Thursday night slate, and players you should start in your season long league. We'll be live about an hour or two before the game starts right here on this channel, talking some of our final thoughts. So make sure you're subscribed and you hit the notification bell so you know when we're going live, and be sure to get those player props linked down below. You get a free bet up to $100. Take that Kareem Hunt over receiving.